Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship moved slowly through the outer edge of the solar system, running routine patrol duties. It was supposed to be a quiet day. Morrison had been in space for 20 years, and quiet days were rare. The communication officer, Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, turned from her console with a confused look. "Admiral, we're receiving something strange. It's not from any human ship or station." Morrison walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "It's a broad-spectrum transmission. Very powerful. The signal is coming from outside our solar system, but it's not like anything we've seen before." Sarah's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Sir, I think this might be from aliens." The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. Morrison felt his heart beat faster. Humanity had been searching for other intelligent life for centuries, but they had never found any proof it existed. "Put it through the main speakers," Morrison ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice spoke. It was clearly not human. The words were translated by the ship's computer, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the sound of complete desperation. "This is Ambassador Kethver of the Zephyrian Federation, broadcasting on all frequencies to any species capable of receiving this message. We are facing extinction. An ancient enemy has awakened. The Devourer swarm has returned, and we do not know how to stop them." Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. The voice continued. "We have tried everything. Our shield worlds have fallen. Our fleets have been destroyed. Billions of our people are dead. We are a peaceful species. We do not know war. We do not know how to fight an enemy that wants only to consume and destroy." The transmission was breaking up, but the aliens' words were clear. "If any species receives this message, if anyone has the knowledge or ability to help us, please respond. We are located in the Kepler 442 system. We have perhaps 2 months before the swarm reaches our homeworld. We do not ask for much. We ask only for any advice, any knowledge that might help us survive. We are sending our complete data files on the swarm with this message." The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent for several seconds. "Sarah, did we get those data files?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir." "They're massive. It's going to take our computers hours to translate and analyze everything." Morrison turned to his navigation officer. "How far is the Kepler 442 system?" "About 1,200 light-years, sir. With our fastest ships, it would take us 6 months. To get there," Morrison nodded slowly. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately. Priority Alpha, tell them we have made first contact with an alien species and they are asking for help." Within hours, the message reached Earth. The response was immediate. Every major leader, scientist, and military officer was called to an emergency meeting. The alien data files were distributed to research teams around the world. Captain Lisa Hayes had been Earth's leading expert on the possibility of alien life. When she received the call, she was working in her laboratory in Geneva. She dropped everything and took the first transport to the Emergency Command Center in Colorado. The room was packed with people she recognized. Scientists, military leaders, and government officials all crowded around displays showing the alien data. Lisa found herself staring at images of creatures that looked like living nightmares. "These are the Devourers," explained Dr. Nina Brooks, who had been analyzing the data. "According to the alien files, they are a hive-minded species that appears every few thousand years. They consume entire star systems, stripping them of all life before moving on." Lisa studied the images. The creatures were massive, with armored shells and multiple appendages designed for destruction. "How do they travel between stars?" "They use some kind of biological space travel. Their ships are grown, not built. Each ship contains thousands of individual creatures, but they all share a single consciousness." General Alex Carter, the head of Earth's military forces, stood up. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" "They're incredibly powerful," Dr. Brooks replied. "According to the aliens, no species has ever successfully fought them off. The standard response is evacuation." "Entire civilizations abandoned?" their worlds and flee to other systems. And the Zephyrians? Lisa asked. They're a peaceful species. They evolved on a world with abundant resources and no major predators. They've never developed military technology beyond basic defense systems. They're completely unprepared for something like this. General Carter looked around the room. How long do we have? The alien said 2 months before the swarm reaches their homeworld. But even if we decided to help, our fastest ships would take 6 months to get there. The room fell silent. Lisa could see the math in everyone's faces. They were too late. President Kate Sullivan entered the room, and everyone stood. She had been briefed on the situation during her flight to the command center. Sit down, everyone. We have a decision to make. She looked around the room. We've just learned that we're not alone in the universe. Our first contact with alien? Life is a species asking for help against an enemy that wants to destroy them. The question is simple. What do we do? Ma'am, General Carter said, even if we wanted to help, we can't get there in time. Their planet will be destroyed before we can arrive. Maybe their planet will be destroyed, the president replied. But these creatures, this swarm, they don't just attack one world and leave. According to the data, they consume entire regions of space. If they're not stopped, they'll keep spreading. Lisa understood what the president was suggesting. You're thinking long-term. I'm thinking about survival. If this swarm is as dangerous as the aliens say, they won't stop with one species. They'll keep expanding, consuming everything in their path. Eventually, they'll reach Earth. The room buzzed with quiet conversations. Lisa looked at the alien data again. The creatures were terrifying, but they were also following patterns. They had weaknesses. Ma'am, Lisa said, I'd like to volunteer to lead a contact team. If we're going to help these aliens, we need to understand them better. President Sullivan nodded. Do it. General Carter, I want you to start planning. If we're going to fight these creatures, we need to know what we're up against. As the meeting broke up, Lisa remained behind, staring at the images of the Devourer swarm. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was asking for help. The question was whether humanity was ready to fight monsters from another world. General Alex Carter walked into the largest briefing room in the Earth Defense Command building. The room was packed with officers, scientists, and government officials from around the world. Large screens covered the walls, showing images and data from the alien transmission. Ladies and gentlemen, Carter began, we have been studying the Zephyrian data for 72 hours. What we have learned changes everything we thought we knew about life in the galaxy. He pressed a button on his remote, and the main screen showed a map of local star systems. Red dots marked areas where the Devourer swarm had been active. The swarm has been attacking civilizations for over 50,000 years. They appear every 3,000 to 4,000 years, consume everything in a region of space, then disappear back into the void between galaxies. No one knows where they come from or where they go. Dr. Nina Brooks stood up from her seat in the front row. She had been leading the research team analyzing the alien biological data. General, may I present our findings on the swarm itself? Carter nodded. Go ahead, Doctor. Nina moved to the front of the room. The Devourer swarm is unlike anything we have ever encountered. They are a collective species, meaning thousands of individual creatures share a single mind. They communicate through some kind of biological quantum network. She clicked her remote, and the screen showed detailed images of the swarm creatures. They were massive, armored beings with multiple limbs and what looked like organic weapons growing from their bodies. Each individual creature is about the size of a small building. They can survive in space without any protection. Their ships are not built, they are grown. The ships are actually living creatures, even larger than the individual swarm members. An officer in the back raised his hand. How do they reproduce? That's the terrifying part, Nina replied. They don't reproduce in the normal sense. They consume organic matter from other species and use it to create new swarm members. The more they eat, the more of them there are. President Sullivan, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Doctor, you said they share a single mind. Does that mean killing one doesn't matter? Not exactly. Each individual creature has some independent thought, but they are all connected to a central consciousness. Think of it like a computer network. If you destroy one computer, the network still functions. But if you destroy enough computers, or if you disrupt the network itself, the whole system breaks down. Commander Ryan Mitchell, a veteran of several space battles, leaned forward. What about their military tactics? Nina looked at her notes. According to the Zephyrian data, the swarm uses overwhelming force. They don't use strategy in the way we understand it. They simply attack with massive numbers until the enemy is destroyed. They have never faced an enemy that fought back effectively. Ryan frowned. Never in 50,000 years? That's what the data shows. Most species in the galaxy are peaceful. When the swarm appears, they either evacuate their worlds or try to negotiate. The few species that have tried to fight were quickly overwhelmed. General Carter returned to the front of the room. This brings us to our situation. The Zephyrians are a perfect example of how most galactic species think. They are highly advanced, but they have never fought a real war. He changed the screen to show images of Zephyrian cities. They were beautiful, with flowing architecture and abundant green spaces. Everything looked peaceful and harmonious. Zephyrians evolved on a world they call Serenity Prime. The planet has no dangerous predators, abundant resources, and a stable climate. They have never faced scarcity or conflict. To them, the idea of violence is almost incomprehensible. Captain Lisa Hayes, who had been studying the Zephyrian cultural data, stood up. I've been analyzing their society. They make decisions through consensus. Everyone has to agree before they take action. They have no military in the sense we understand it. Their defense forces are more like emergency rescue teams. How do they handle crime? Ask an officer. They don't have crime as we know it. When someone breaks their rules, they are isolated from society until they agree to follow the rules again. The concept of punishing someone or using force to make them comply is foreign to them. President Sullivan shook her head. No wonder. They're helpless against the swarm. Dr. Nina Brooks pulled up more data on her tablet. I've been studying the swarm's attack patterns. They are predictable. They always attack the same way. They send scout ships first, then wait for the enemy to either flee or prepare defenses. Then they attack with overwhelming numbers. What happens if the enemy flees? Carter asked. They chase them. The swarm follows fleeing populations and destroys them wherever they go. Running only delays the inevitable. Commander Ryan Mitchell studied the tactical data. Their predictability could be their weakness. If they always attack the same way, we can prepare for it. But Ryan, Lisa said, they have overwhelming numbers. Even if we know how they'll attack, how do we fight millions of creatures? Ryan smiled grimly. We don't fight fair. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to use terrain, deception, and superior weapons to overcome larger forces. General Carter nodded. That's exactly what I was thinking. The swarm has never faced an enemy that fights dirty. Dr. Brooks looked confused. What do you mean by fighting dirty? The swarm attacks directly with honor, if you can call it that, Carter explained. They don't use deception or tricks. They don't retreat when they're losing. They just keep attacking until they win or die. But that's not how humans fight, Ryan added. We use ambush, traps, and deception. We retreat when we need to, then attack from unexpected directions. We adapt our tactics during battle. President Sullivan looked around the room. So you're saying we might actually have a chance against them? More than a chance, Carter replied. I think we might be the first species they've encountered that actually knows how to fight a war. The room buzzed with conversation. Lisa looked at the images of the swarm creatures again. They were still terrifying, but now she could see weaknesses. They relied on their collective mind, but that same connection could be disrupted. They used overwhelming force, but that made them predictable. There's something else? Nina said, quieting the room. The Zephyrians have sent us their complete Historical records? They've been in contact with dozens of other species over the centuries. None of them has ever heard of humans. What does that mean? Asked an officer. It means we're completely unknown to the galaxy, Carter replied. The swarm has no data on us. They don't know how we fight, what our weapons are like, or how we think. We have the advantage of complete surprise. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. We're talking about going to war with aliens. Are we really ready for this? President Sullivan stood up. Captain Hayes, I want you to lead a team to establish direct communication with the Zephyrians. We need to learn everything we can about them and their enemies. She looked around the room. General Carter, I want you to begin war planning immediately. Assume we're going to fight the swarm. I want to know what we need and how long it will take to get it. Ma'am, Ryan said, even if we start preparing now, we can't reach the Zephyrian system before the swarm destroys their planet. Then we'll have to be ready for the long war, the president replied. If the swarm is as dangerous as the data suggests, they won't stop with the Zephyrians. Eventually, they'll come for us. The meeting broke up, but Lisa remained behind with Nina and Ryan. They stared at the images of the swarm creatures on the screens. Do you really think we can win? Lisa asked. Ryan nodded slowly. I think we're the first species the swarm has encountered that actually wants to fight them. That has to count for something. Nina looked at her biological data. The Zephyrians have been trying to understand the swarm for months. They've approached it like a scientific problem. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's not a problem to be understood. Maybe it's an enemy to be destroyed. Lisa felt a cold determination settle in her chest. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't. And their first contact with alien life was a species asking for help. Against monsters, the question was no longer whether humanity would help. The question was whether they were ready to become the galaxy's warriors. President Kate Sullivan stood before the United Earth Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on the planet. The massive hall was completely silent. Everyone knew this speech would change the course of human history. 3 days ago, we received our first message from another intelligent species, the president began. The Zephyrian Federation is facing extinction from an enemy called the Devourer Swarm. They have asked for our help. She pressed a button on her podium, and the screens around the hall showed images of the swarm creatures. Several representatives gasped at the horrifying sight. These creatures have been destroying civilizations for 50,000 years. No species has ever successfully fought them off. The Zephyrians, like most galactic civilizations, are peaceful. They do not know how to fight a war. The president paused, letting her words sink in. But we do. Humanity has survived on Earth, a Class 12 death world, for hundreds of thousands of years. We have fought wars, faced extinction, and overcome impossible odds. We are what the galaxy calls Deathworlders. She looked around the hall. The question before us is simple. Do we stand by and let an entire species die, or do we do what humans have always done when innocents are threatened? Do we fight? The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed to mobilize for war within hours. Admiral Steve Parker found himself in the largest war room ever constructed. The facility had been built deep underground, with communication links to every military installation on Earth and throughout the solar system. People, we have the biggest job in human history, Admiral Parker announced to the assembled officers. We need to prepare our entire military for interstellar war. Captain Tom Bradley, commander of the flagship UES Retribution, studied the tactical displays. Admiral, we're talking about a journey of 6 months just to reach the battle zone. We'll need supply ships, repair facilities, and enough ammunition for a war that could last years. Then we'll build them, Parker replied. I've already spoken with the industrial councils. Every shipyard in the solar system is being converted to military production. We're going to build the largest fleet in human history. The scope of the mobilization was staggering. On Earth, factories that had been producing consumer goods were retooled to make weapons and ship components. The asteroid mining operations in the belt were expanded to provide raw materials. The colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter began producing fuel and supplies. Dr. Amy Foster stood in her laboratory, surrounded by alien data and human weapons designs. She had been tasked with creating weapons that could kill the swarm creatures. "The problem is their armor," she explained to her team. "The Zephyrian data shows that standard energy weapons barely scratch them. We need something more powerful." Her assistant, Dr. Bob Martinez, pulled up biological scans on his screen. "What if we target their internal organs instead of trying to punch through their armor?" Amy nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking. The swarm creatures have a distributed nervous system. If we can disrupt their neural pathways, we might be able to kill them without destroying their armor." She began designing specialized ammunition. The bullets would penetrate the armor, then release a neural toxin that would attack the creature's nervous system. It was a weapon designed specifically to kill the swarm. Chief Engineer Ben Taylor was working on a different problem. The human fleet would need to fight in space for months, possibly years. The ships needed to be modified for extended combat operations. "We're going to turn every ship into a fortress," he told his engineering teams. Additional armor, redundant systems, and emergency repair capabilities. If a ship gets damaged, it needs to keep fighting. He designed modular repair systems that could be quickly installed on damaged vessels. He also created new defensive systems that could protect human ships from the swarm's biological weapons, but the most important modification was psychological. Ben knew that human crews would be fighting far from home against an enemy that had never been defeated. The ships needed to feel like home, like sanctuary. "Every ship gets a garden," he announced. "I don't care if it's just a small room with some plants. Our people need to remember what they're fighting for." Captain Lisa Hayes was working on the diplomatic side of the war effort. She had established direct communication with the Zephyrians and was learning everything she could about their society. "Ambassador Kethver, we need to understand your people better," she said during one of their video calls. "If we're going to fight together, we need to know how you think." The alien ambassador looked confused. "Captain Hayes, you keep talking about fighting together. We do not fight. We cannot fight. It is not in our nature." Lisa felt frustrated. "But your people are dying. The swarm is destroying your worlds. Don't you want to fight back?" "We want to survive," Kethver replied. "But we do not understand your concept of organized violence. When you say fight, what do you mean?" Lisa realized she was dealing with beings who had never experienced conflict. "Ambassador, let me ask you this. If someone was hurting your child, what would you do?" "I would ask them to stop. If they did not stop, I would ask others to help me convince them to stop." "And if they still didn't stop?" Kethver was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know. This situation has never occurred in our history." Lisa understood the problem. The Zephyrians were not cowards. They simply had no concept of using violence to solve problems. It was like trying to explain color to someone who had been blind since birth. "Ambassador, humans have a saying, sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to punch them in the nose. The swarm is a bully. They understand only force. If we don't fight them, they will keep destroying everything." Meanwhile, General Alex Carter was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Every branch of the military was involved. The Army was training for ground combat on alien worlds. The Navy was preparing for space battles. The Air Force was developing new fighter designs for zero-gravity combat. "We're not just preparing for one battle," Carter explained to his staff. "We're preparing for a war that could last decades. The swarm has been doing this for 50,000 years. They won't give up easily." The training was intense. Soldiers learned to fight in alien environments. Pilots practiced combat maneuvers in zero gravity. Engineers learned to maintain equipment, light years from the nearest supply depot. But the most important training was psychological. Human troops were being prepared to fight an enemy that was utterly alien. The swarm creatures didn't think like humans. They didn't fear death. They didn't feel pain the way humans did. "Remember," Carter told his troops, "the swarm has never faced an enemy like us. They expect their opponents to run away or give up. We're going to do neither. We're going to fight until every last one of them is dead. The Zephyrians watched the human preparations with a mixture of awe and horror. They had never seen an entire civilization mobilize for war. To them, the humans looked like they were transforming into monsters. Are all humans like this? Ambassador Kethfer asked Captain Hayes during one of their conversations. Like what? Lisa replied. So quick to choose violence. So eager to fight. Lisa thought about the question. No, Ambassador. Most humans prefer peace. But when someone threatens innocence, when someone tries to destroy everything we care about, we become something else. We become what we need to be to protect the people we love. She looked at the images of human ships being prepared for war. The swarm thinks they're hunting prey. They're about to learn they're hunting predators. 3 months after the first alien transmission, the human fleet was ready. Over 10,000 ships had been built or modified for war. Millions of tons of supplies had been loaded. The largest military force in human history was prepared to travel to another star system to fight monsters. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the command ship UES Vengeance, looking out at the massive fleet assembled around him. Every ship was crewed by volunteers. Every person in the fleet had chosen to risk their lives for aliens they had never met. All ships, this is Admiral Parker, he announced over the fleet communication system. We are about to embark on the longest journey in human history. We are going to fight an enemy that has never been defeated. But we are not going there to die. We are going there to win. He paused, looking at the stars. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when someone threatens innocence in front of humans. They're about to learn why Earth is called a death world. All ships, prepare for a hyperspace jump. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of 2 species and the fury of an entire world. The swarm had ruled the galaxy through fear for 50,000 years. Their reign was about to end. The space around Kepler's rest mining station had been empty for 3 days. The swarm had taken the planet 2 weeks ago, turning it into a feeding ground. Massive bioships floated in orbit, consuming everything they could find. The swarm creatures moved slowly through the debris fields, picking apart the remains of Zephyrian ships. They had grown comfortable in their conquest. No one had ever challenged them before. Then space itself seemed to tear open. The first human ship to emerge from hyperspace was the UES Vengeance, Admiral Jake Morrison's flagship. It was followed by another ship, then 10 more, then hundreds. Within minutes, over 10,000 human vessels filled the space around the system. The swarm creatures stopped moving. Their collective consciousness had never experienced anything like this. Number species had ever brought a fleet this large to fight them. Most civilizations barely managed to field a few hundred ships before being overwhelmed. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays update as his ship spread out into battle formation. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're detecting massive biosignatures throughout the system. The swarm has at least 5,000 ships here," Morrison nodded. "Tell the fleet to maintain formation. We're not here to fight yet. We're here to rescue survivors and establish our presence." Captain Lisa Hayes stood beside him, watching the alien ships on the screen. After 6 months of travel, she was finally seeing the enemy face to face. The swarm vessels looked like massive insects crossed with spaceships. They were organic, covered in armor plates that looked like they had grown naturally. "They're not attacking," she observed. "They're confused," Morrison replied. "According to the Zephyrian data, no one has ever brought a fleet this size to fight. They don't know what to do." The confusion was spreading through the swarm's collective consciousness. Their simple attack patterns had no response for this situation. They had expected the usual pattern, a few desperate ships fleeing in panic. Easy prey to be hunted down and consumed. Commander Ryan Mitchell was on the bridge of the destroyer, UES Lightning, studying the enemy formations through his ship's sensors. "They're not even in defensive positions," he reported to his crew. "They're just floating there like they're waiting for us to run away." his tactical officer, Lieutenant. Mark Davis looked up from his console. Sir, should we attack? Not yet, Ryan replied. The Admiral wants to gather intelligence first, but keep the weapons ready. Something tells me this peaceful moment won't last long. Throughout the human fleet, similar conversations were happening. The crews had trained for 6 months, preparing for the fight of their lives. Now they faced an enemy that seemed frozen by uncertainty on the Vengeance. Captain Lisa Hayes was coordinating with the Zephyrian survivors hiding on the outer moons of the system. There weren't many left, but those who remained were amazed by what they were seeing. Ambassador Kethfer, this is Captain Hayes. Are you receiving our transmission? The alien's voice came through clearly, but it was filled with disbelief. Captain Hayes, we are detecting your fleet, but our sensors must be malfunctioning. It appears you have brought over 10,000 ships. Your sensors are working fine, Ambassador. We brought our entire fleet. There was a long pause. Captain, I do not understand. When we asked for help, we hoped for perhaps a single ship with advisors or weapons. We never expected ... this, Lisa smiled. Ambassador, when humans make a promise, we keep it. We promised to help, so we brought everything we had. The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the human fleet. The swarm had finally made their decision. Admiral, the tactical officer reported, the enemy fleet is moving. They're forming up for attack. Morrison watched as thousands of bioships began to move in perfect coordination. The swarm's confusion had passed, and now they were responding. With their standard tactic, overwhelming force. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. The enemy is moving to attack. Implement Battle Plan Alpha. Remember, we're not here to win the war today. We're here to show them that someone is finally willing to fight back. The human fleet began to move. But instead of forming the traditional battle lines that most species used, they scattered into small groups. Each group of ships moved independently, using tactics the swarm had never seen before. The first contact came when a group of swarm bioships encountered Commander Ryan Mitchell's destroyer squadron. The aliens attacked in their usual fashion, charging straight at the human ships with overwhelming numbers, but the humans didn't stand and fight. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking at the enemy then retreating before the swarm could respond. Ryan's ships darted between asteroids, using the debris field as cover. Target their propulsion systems, Ryan ordered. Don't try to destroy them completely. Just damage them enough to slow them down. The human weapons were different from anything the swarm had faced. Instead of trying to punch through the creature's heavy armor, the weapons targeted weak points and joints. Dr. Amy Foster's neural toxin rounds proved devastatingly effective, disrupting the creature's nervous systems. Direct hit on the lead bioship, reported Lieutenant Davis. It's losing coordination. The creature seems to be having trouble controlling its ship functions. Throughout the battle zone, similar engagements were taking place. The human fleet refused to engage in the kind of massive frontal assault that the swarm expected. Instead, they used mobility, deception, and superior tactics to outmaneuver their enemies. General Alex Carter was commanding the ground forces aboard the assault. Carrier UES Hammer. His ships were approaching the mining station where swarm creatures were still feeding on the planetary remains. This is our first chance to see how they fight on solid ground, he told his troops. Remember, these creatures have never faced human infantry tactics. Use that advantage. The assault began with a surprise attack. Human dropships landed on the far side of the mining station, away from the main swarm concentration. The troops moved quickly through the facility, using stealth and small unit tactics to isolate groups of enemies. The swarm creatures were individually powerful, but they had never faced enemies who used cover, coordinated fire, and tactical movement. Human soldiers used explosives to collapse corridors, trapping the creatures in small groups where they could be eliminated with concentrated firepower. The creatures are trying to adapt, reported Sergeant Tim Wilson over the communications network, but they're still fighting like they expect us to charge straight at them. Chief Engineer Ben Taylor was monitoring the battle from the fleet's mobile repair facility. His modifications to the human ships were proving their worth. Even ships that took heavy damage were able to continue fighting thanks to the redundant systems he had installed. "The enemy bioweapons are powerful," he reported to Admiral Morrison, "but our armor modifications are holding. More importantly, our ships can take damage and keep fighting." The swarm ships seem to shut down completely when they're badly damaged. This was a crucial difference. The swarm creatures were either fully functional or completely dead. They had no concept of fighting while wounded. Human ships, on the other hand, could lose half their systems and still remain in the battle. Captain Lisa Hayes was analyzing the battle data as it came in. "Admiral, we're seeing something interesting. The swarm's coordination is breaking down in areas where we've damaged multiple ships. It's like their collective consciousness has trouble adapting to unexpected losses," Morrison nodded. "That matches what Dr. Brooks predicted. Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. They depend on perfect coordination, but that makes them vulnerable to disruption." The battle continued for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the humans had achieved something no species had ever done before. They had won a fight against the Devourer swarm. The victory wasn't complete. Most of the swarm ships had survived, and they had retreated to the outer system to regroup. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the swarm had been forced to retreat. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from Zephyrian survivors throughout the system. They're celebrating." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had taken damage, but every ship was still functional. More importantly, they had proven that the swarm could be fought. "Send a message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have engaged the enemy and achieved tactical victory. The swarm can be beaten." Throughout the human fleet, crews were working to repair damage and prepare for the next battle. They knew this was just the beginning. The swarm would adapt, would bring more ships, would fight harder, but for the first time in galactic history, someone had proven that the ancient terror could bleed. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. In the distance, she could see the lights of Zephyrian rescue ships moving to help survivors. For 6 months, she had wondered if humanity was making the right choice by coming here. Now she knew. The galaxy had spent 50,000 years running from the swarm. It was time for someone to make the monsters run instead. The war had begun, and humanity intended to finish it. Dr. Nina Brooks worked through her 3rd sleepless night in the laboratory aboard the research ship UES Discovery. Around her, containers held specimens of swarm creatures captured during the battle at Kepler's Rest. The sight of them still made her skin crawl, but she had made an incredible discovery. "General Carter, you need to see this," she said into her communicator. Within an hour, General Alex Carter arrived at the lab with Captain Lisa Hayes and Commander Ryan Mitchell. They found Nina standing over a dissection table, her hands shaking with excitement. "I've figured out how their collective consciousness works," she announced. "Look at this." She pointed to a small organ near the creature's brain. It was unlike anything in Earth biology, with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own light. This organ uses quantum entanglement to connect with other swarm creatures across vast distances. Every creature has one, and they're all linked together. That's how they coordinate perfectly across entire star systems. Ryan leaned closer to examine the organ. "So, if we destroy this, the creature loses contact with the collective?" "Better than that," Nina replied. "I've been experimenting with our communication equipment. The same technology we use for faster-than-light communication can be modified to interfere with their quantum network." She led them to another table where human communication devices had been torn apart and rebuilt. "I've created what I'm calling a neural static generator. It broadcasts interference on the same quantum frequencies the swarm uses to communicate." Captain Hayes understood immediately. "You're talking about jamming their collective consciousness." "Exactly. If we can disrupt their network, individual swarm creatures become confused and disoriented. They lose their perfect coordination and start acting like separate animals instead of parts of a single mind." General Carter studied the device. "How large an area can this affect?" "That's the best part. Because they use quantum entanglement, The effect spreads through their network. One device can potentially disrupt hundreds of creatures, and the confusion spreads to others connected to them. The implications were staggering. For the first time, humanity had a weapon that could turn the swarm's greatest strength into a weakness. 3 weeks later, the weapon was tested in battle at the fortress world of Haven's Gate. The planet had been abandoned by the Zephians 6 months earlier, but it was strategically important. If the humans could take it back, they would control a major hyperspace route. Admiral Steve Parker commanded the assault fleet from his flagship, UES Retribution. The plan was complex, using the neural static weapon in coordination with traditional military tactics. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker," he announced over the fleet communications. "Today we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to take a planet back from the swarm." The human fleet approached Haven's Gate in 3 groups. The first group, led by Commander Ryan Mitchell, would engage the swarm ships in orbit. The second group, commanded by Captain Tom Bradley, would provide support and use the neural static weapons. The third group, carrying General Carter's ground forces, would assault the planet itself. The battle began as the swarm detected the approaching human ships. As expected, they responded with their standard tactic: overwhelming force. Thousands of bioships moved to intercept the humans, but this time the humans were ready with something new. "Activate neural static generators," Admiral Parker ordered, throughout the fleet. The modified communication devices came online. The effect on the swarm was immediate and dramatic. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began flying erratic patterns. Some collided with each other. Others simply stopped moving altogether. "It's working," reported Captain Bradley from his command ship. "The enemy formation is breaking apart. Individual ships are acting independently." Commander Ryan Mitchell took advantage of the chaos. His fighter squadron swept through the confused swarm ships, targeting them one by one while they were unable to coordinate their defenses. "This is incredible," he reported. "They're not working together anymore. Each ship is trying to fight on its own, and they don't know how to do it." On the planet's surface, General Carter led the ground assault. His troops landed at multiple points around the planet, using the neural static effect to their advantage. The swarm creatures on the ground were just as confused as those in space. Without their collective consciousness, they reverted to basic animal instincts. They were still dangerous individually, but they no longer fought as a coordinated army. Sergeant Tim Wilson advanced through the ruins of a Zephyrian city with his squad. "The creatures are scattered," he reported. "They're not supporting each other anymore. We can pick them off one by one." The human soldiers used their superior tactics to systematically clear the planet. They moved in coordinated teams, using cover and mutual support to overcome individual swarm creatures. What would have been an impossible fight against a coordinated enemy became a series of manageable small battles. Captain Amy Foster was leading a special forces team to capture one of the planet's main communication centers. As they approached the facility, they found dozens of swarm creatures wandering around aimlessly. "They look lost," observed Lieutenant Don Roberts. "Like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing," Amy nodded. "That's exactly what's happening. Without their collective consciousness, they're just individual animals in an alien environment. They don't know how to function independently." The assault on the communication center was almost anticlimactic. The swarm creatures put up resistance, but they fought as individuals instead of a coordinated force. The human team was able to take the facility with minimal casualties. Meanwhile, in orbit, the space battle was turning into a rout. The swarm ships, deprived of their collective coordination, were being systematically destroyed by the human fleet. "Enemy resistance is collapsing," reported Admiral Parker to the fleet. "All groups, press the attack. Don't give them time to adapt." But the most important discovery came from Dr. Nina Brooks, who was monitoring the neural static effect from her laboratory ship. "Admiral," she reported excitedly, "the effect is spreading beyond our target area. The confusion is transmitting through their quantum network to swarm forces in other systems. This was better than anyone had hoped." The neural static wasn't just affecting local swarm forces, it was disrupting their entire regional network, causing confusion among swarm forces throughout the sector. Captain Lisa Hayes was coordinating with Zephyrin forces who had been hiding in the outer system. Ambassador Kethfer, our sensors show swarm ships throughout the region are showing signs of coordination breakdown. Your people can start returning to their evacuated worlds. The alien ambassador's voice carried a tone of wonder. Captain Hayes, we are witnessing something our people thought impossible. The swarm has never been defeated in battle. Yet your forces are not just winning, you are making it look routine. The battle for Haven's Gate ended in complete human victory. For the first time in galactic history, a planet had been liberated from swarm occupation. More importantly, the neural static weapon had proven that the swarm's collective consciousness could be disrupted, but the victory came with an unexpected consequence. Throughout the galaxy, other species began to take notice. The swarm's apparent invincibility had been shattered, and word was spreading that a new species called humans had achieved the impossible. Chief Engineer Ben Taylor was coordinating repair efforts on the captured planet when his sensors detected something unprecedented. Admiral Parker were receiving communication signals from unknown sources. Multiple species are trying to contact us. Admiral Parker looked at the communication data in amazement. How many species? At least 12 different signals, sir. Some of them are coming from systems hundreds of light years away. Word is spreading that someone finally beat the swarm. Captain Lisa Hayes found herself overwhelmed with first contact protocols. Each new species that contacted them had the same message. They wanted to join the fight against the swarm. Captain, said Ambassador Kethfer during one of their regular communications, you must understand what you have done. For 50,000 years, the galaxy has lived in fear of the swarm. Species have hidden, run away, or simply accepted extinction when the swarm appeared. You are the first to fight back successfully. Lisa looked at the tactical displays showing human ships patrolling the liberated system. We did what we had to do. When someone threatens innocence, you fight back. But that is exactly why other species want to ally with you, the ambassador explained. They have never seen anyone willing to fight for strangers. Most species barely fight to defend themselves. General Carter was establishing permanent bases on Haven's Gate when he received new orders from Earth Command. The success of the neural static weapon had changed everything. Humanity was no longer just helping one species survive. They were becoming the leaders of a galactic resistance movement. General, Admiral Parker told him during a secure communication, Earth Command wants us to prepare for a major offensive. We're not just fighting to save the Zephyrians anymore. We're fighting to drive the swarm out of this entire region of space. Carter nodded grimly. How many species are joining us? The Void Nebula had been the swarm's primary staging ground for over 1,000 years. Hidden in the dark clouds of space dust and radiation, massive bioships had grown and multiplied, preparing for their next great assault on galactic civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history assembled around his command ship. Over 50,000 vessels from 30 different species had gathered for the final assault on the swarm's stronghold. Admiral, reported his communications officer, President Sullivan's ship has just arrived. Morrison nodded. The President of Earth had insisted on being present for the final battle. Her ship, the UES Liberty, took position at the center of the fleet formation. Admiral Morrison, came the President's voice over the communication system. This is an honor I never expected to have, leading the combined forces of the galaxy against an ancient evil. Morrison looked at the tactical displays showing the massive Allied fleet. Human ships formed the backbone of the force, but they were joined by Zephyrian healing vessels, Corvan heavy cruisers, and ships from dozens of other species. Ma'am, 18 months ago we received a simple plea for help. Today we're ending a threat that has plagued the galaxy for 50,000 years. Dr. Nina Brooks was aboard the research vessel UES Discovery, monitoring the fleet's neural static generators. Her breakthrough had been refined and improved by scientists from multiple species. The weapon that would win the war had become a collaborative effort. All neural static generators are online and synchronized, she reported. We're about to disrupt the largest collective consciousness in galactic history. Commander Ryan Mitchell led the advanced scout forces into the nebula. His sensors immediately detected what they had come to find: thousands of swarm bioships, some of them larger than anything they had seen before. "Admiral, we have visual confirmation of the primary hive ship," he reported. "It's massive. Our sensors show it's over 50 kilometers long." The hive ship was the center of the swarm's collective consciousness for this entire region of space. Destroying it would sever the connection between individual swarm forces and their central command. "That's our primary target," Admiral Morrison announced to the fleet. "All forces implement Battle Plan Omega. Remember, we're not just fighting for our own species today. We're fighting for the future of all intelligent life in the galaxy." The battle began with the activation of the neural static generators. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the nebula, swarm ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began flying erratic patterns. Captain Tom Bradley commanded a squadron of heavy cruisers that pushed deep into the nebula. "The neural static is working. Even better than expected," he reported. "The swarm ships are colliding with each other. Some of them have stopped moving completely, but the swarm adapted faster than expected." The massive hive ship began to pulse with strange energies, and gradually some coordination returned to the scattered bioships. "They're fighting back against the neural static," Dr. Brooks reported with concern. "The hive ship is boosting its signal to overcome our interference." General Alex Carter was leading the assault troops aboard a fleet of transport ships. Their mission was to board the hive ship and destroy it from the inside. "We always knew it would come down to close combat," he told his troops. "The neural static has given us the advantage we need, but we have to finish this the hard way." The assault on the hive ship was the most dangerous mission ever attempted by human forces. The massive bioship was defended by thousands of swarm creatures, and its internal structure was completely alien. Captain Amy Foster led the first wave of boarding parties through breaches cut in the hive ship's hull. The interior was like nothing they had ever seen: organic corridors that pulsed with their own life, walls that seemed to move and breathe. "Stay together," she ordered her troops. "This entire ship is one massive creature. It can sense our presence." The human soldiers fought their way through the ship's living corridors, using their superior tactics and weapons to overcome the defending swarm creatures. But the deeper they went, the more intense the resistance became. Sergeant Tim Wilson's squad was advancing toward the ship's central nervous system when they encountered the largest swarm creature any human had ever seen. It was the size of a building, with armor that seemed to absorb their weapons fire. "Conventional weapons aren't working," he reported. "This thing is too big." Chief Engineer Ben Taylor had anticipated this problem. "Use the neural toxin charges," he advised over the communication system. "Don't try to kill it with bullets. Poison its nervous system." The human soldiers threw their specialized grenades at the massive creature. The neural toxins spread through its body, disrupting its nervous system. Within minutes, the creature collapsed, paralyzed by its own inability to coordinate its movements. Meanwhile, Admiral Morrison was coordinating the space battle from the Defiance. The Allied fleet was systematically destroying the confused swarm ships, but the hive ship remained the key to victory. "Admiral," reported Captain Lisa Hayes from her coordination ship, "our ground forces have reached the hive ship's central chamber. They're preparing to plant the neural static bomb." Morrison watched the tactical display as tiny dots representing human soldiers moved through the massive enemy vessel. Everything depended on their success. Deep inside the hive ship, Admiral Morrison himself led the final assault team. He had insisted on personally delivering the neural static bomb to the creature's central nervous system. "This is for every species the swarm has destroyed," he said as he placed the device next to the pulsing organic computer that controlled the collective consciousness The explosion was not large, but its effect was catastrophic for the swarm. The neural static bomb severed the connection between the hive ship and every swarm creature in the galaxy. The collective consciousness that had existed for millions of years was suddenly shattered into millions of individual minds throughout the nebula. Swarm bioships began to shut down as their crews lost all coordination. Without their collective consciousness, the individual creatures had no idea how to operate their ships or coordinate their actions. All swarm ships have ceased coordinated movement, reported Commander Mitchell. They're just drifting. Some of them are attacking each other. The Allied fleet moved in to finish the job. Ship by ship, the swarm forces were systematically destroyed. Creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for 50,000 years were reduced to confused animals floating helplessly in space. Captain Amy Foster emerged from the dying hive ship with her surviving troops. The primary objective is complete, she reported. The hive ship is dead. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had hidden in fear for millennia came out to join the victory festivities. The swarm, the ancient terror that had seemed unstoppable, had been completely destroyed. 3 months later, Captain Lisa Hayes stood in the first human embassy on Serenity Prime, the Zephyrian homeworld. Through the windows, she could see human and Zephyrian children playing together in the embassy gardens. "Captain," said Ambassador Kethver as he entered her office, "the Galactic Council has made their decision. Earth has been formally recognized as the protector of this region of space." Lisa smiled. "We never wanted to be galactic protectors. We just wanted to help when someone asked for it. And that is precisely why you are suited for the role," the ambassador replied. "Most species seek power for its own sake. Humans seem to gain power by accident while trying to help others." Outside in the embassy gardens, Admiral Morrison was teaching a group of alien children how to play a human game called baseball. It was a strange sight, a military leader who had just won the greatest war in galactic history, patiently explaining the rules of a simple game to beings from another world. President Sullivan arrived at the embassy for the formal signing of the Galactic Alliance Treaty. Under the agreement, Earth would lead a permanent defense force to protect member species from any future threats. "Madam President," Admiral Morrison said as he approached, "the fleet is ready for our new mission. We have ships from 47 different species, all working together under human command." "And what is our new mission, Admiral?" she asked. Morrison looked up at the stars visible through the embassy's dome. "The same mission we've always had: protect the innocent, help those who ask for it, and make sure that no species ever has to face extinction alone again." Dr. Nina Brooks had established a research center on Haven's Gate, where scientists from multiple species were working together to understand the swarm and prevent anything like them from appearing again. "We've learned something important," she told the assembled researchers. "The swarm wasn't evil in the way we understand it. They were just following their nature. But that doesn't make them less dangerous. Nature can be cruel, and sometimes intelligence has to fight back against nature to survive." Commander Ryan Mitchell was now in charge of training the new Galactic Defense Force. Human tactics and strategies were being taught to species throughout the galaxy, adapted for their unique capabilities and cultures.